Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be making a holiday inspired mead. I had some leftover cranberries and some oranges from making my cranberry orange wine coming up for Christmas. So we're going to repurpose those leftover cranberries and some of those oranges, and we're going to make an orange flower cranberry orange zest mead. I'm pretty excited about it. So let me show you how we're going to do it. All right, so this is going to be everything that we're going to use in this holiday inspired mead. And we'll talk about all the items I have here on the counter. All right, kind of just going from left to right. These are going to be the leftover cranberries that I was talking about. So there's going to be 8 pounds total here, and we're going to be shooting for a gallon to a gallon and a half batch for this particular mead. We have our honey, of course. This is also leftover honey from another mead that I did. This is orange blossom honey from McCoy's. It's great stuff, all natural. And I think I got about 4 pounds in there. We'll be shooting for about a 13% alcohol by volume in this particular mead. Some of the tools of the trade here. We'll be using a wine thief. This will help us pull some of the must out to test it with a hydrometer, which is going to be this here to determine the alcohol content. This is going to be our airlock that we will put on the fermentation bucket once the must is created. We're going to use this scale. Any scale will work, but this is going to help us measure our Fermade K and Fermade O that I'll talk about in just a second. This is just a simple, small cold brew bag that's used for coffee. I'm just going to use it for the zest of the orange. And everything that you see here has been sanitized to include the little bag here. We have a ½ teaspoon measure because we'll be using that for our additives. A zester. This is just a spray bottle filled with star sand that I use to sanitize things as needed as we go. So real quickly, with all the additives we're going to be using today, we have the Candom tablets, which will be 1 tablet of this. This will help us sanitize our must. And in 24 hours, we'll add our yeast to that. The yeast we'll be using in 24 hours is going to be KVV1116. I love this. This is good for alcohol content, strong alcohol content, even up to 18%. Very good yeast. We're going to use Fermade O and Fermade K in kind of a dual effort here. Fermade O is going to be an all-natural nitrogen increaser for our yeast in our must, and this is going to help the yeast kick off. The Fermade K, the only time we're going to use that is going to be today. It's going to be 1 gram of this for our 1 gallon batch. And this is going to have DAP in it, no urea or anything like that. You can see the bag there. This is going to help us kickstart our mead into fermentation. This is going to be wine tannin. This is going to help with the overall mouthfeel of the mead. Our acid blend will give it a little bit of acid and help out with that pH. Although cranberries do have a high level of acid in it, I still like to add the acid blend to this particular one. This is going to be pectic enzyme. This is going to help with the pectin that is inside of the fruit. It's going to break down those cell walls and help release all that good juice that's inside. We have our star sand here. That's what I use. You'll see a drill as well as a stirring device here. I just use this to stir up the honey. I don't heat it up or anything, and this is going to be really easy to make sure I mix the must up well. This is the must bag that we're going to be putting our fruit into to make sure that it's easier to clear out. It keeps all the fruit particles, if you will, in there. These have already been crushed. This is from a previous wine batch, and I've already crushed these, so that's just something to keep in mind. You will need to, you can crush these by hand, you can crush them with a potato smasher in a pan, however you want to do that, but just break them up a little bit, break the skins, get some of that juice released. We'll be using the zest of 4 oranges today, as well as the juice of 4 oranges. I will be cutting these up, you'll be seeing that. I will not be putting in the pith part of that. It can become bitter, so we'll be using the zest and the juice of those. Eventually, you will need a 1 gallon vessel of some type once we rack it for the first time. I'm not going to be using this today, but this is just an example of the 1 gallon vessel I'll be using, or carboy. And this will be about a 6 gallon fermentation bucket. You might be asking, why am I using a 6 gallon fermentation bucket for a 1 gallon mead? And that's going to be because the airspace, the headspace doesn't really matter during fermentation because it's filled up with CO2 as that yeast consumes the sugars and creates alcohol. So I'm not really concerned with the size of that. As long as you have a bucket that you can put your must into, it will work just fine. All right, so this is just going to be 1 gram of Fermade K and 0.4 grams of Fermade O, our yeast nutrient. I just put that into a sanitized mason jar with some distilled water just to get it a little bit dissolved in there. We're going to go ahead and add that in. This is a sanitized bucket, remember that. Then we'll add in the rest of our additives here. We're going to add in 1/2 teaspoon of pectic enzyme, a 1/2 teaspoon of a mixed acid blend, and then a 1/2 teaspoon of wine tannin. I recommend doing the wine tannin last. It's a little bit messy. That way you're not sticking wine tannin into the rest of your additives there. All right, and we're gonna crush in 1 Camden tablet. I'm gonna weigh the honey because I'm not sure exactly how much we have here. So we'll pour this in and weigh it and see. And this is, again, sanitizing is gonna be one of the most important things here. 4 pounds and 13 ounces of honey is what we're gonna be adding to this particular batch. You could stop at 4 if you wanted to. I didn't want to waste any honey and used up the rest of the honey. All right, so we have our almost 5 pounds of honey. We'll put that right into our must with our additives that's already there. Just dump that right in. And our sanitized spatula here, and scoop all that honey out of there. It's a little slick. I want to drop it in here. All right, so now what we're gonna do is put our cranberries into the must bag. Remember, these are already crushed from a previous batch left over. Just gonna dump them right in here. There we go. And I'll just set that down for a moment while I grab the other bag. Here's that second bag of leftover cranberries. Just dump that right in there. And temporarily zip this up, hang that over the side, and I'll come back and show you the zip tie that I used. All right, now that our cranberries are in there, all 8 pounds of it, I'm gonna close this off. What I do is I wrap the string around the top of the must bag. This ensures that none of that cranberry fruit is gonna come out as it begins to break down. It can really make a mess, really make your mead cloudy. I like to get ahead of it, so I just kind of wrap it up. And then I ensure that it's gonna stay on there because I'm gonna be mixing up this must over the next couple days to induce some oxygen. I love these little silicone zip ties. You can find these down in the description below, the Amazon link for that, but they're great. It really keeps the bag shut, they're reusable, and you can sanitize them. Now what we're gonna do is add in 1 bottle. This is the water that I usually use, just good old drinking water. Some people use distilled water, doesn't matter. I'm gonna add in 1 whole gallon. Now what I'm gonna do is use that drill and that stirring rod to really mix up the honey and the water and ensure that it's fully incorporated before I take my first hydrometer reading. All right, so we should be pretty fairly well incorporated. We'll take our first hydrometer reading. So all I'm gonna be doing is using the wine thief here, I guess a mead thief in this circumstance, to pull out some of the must and put it in here with our hydrometer. We're gonna get an initial reading and see where we're at. Since we had 5 pounds of honey, we added 1 gallon of water. We're probably somewhere in the range of about between 12.5 to 15. It's a big range, but we'll see where we're at. We can see that, but we're just at about 16%. So we were just at about 16, between 15.5, 16%. We're gonna add about a quarter to a half gallon here. Take another reading. I'd like to be at around 13.5 to 14. We'll see what we get here with about half a gallon. That puts us at about 1.5 gallons total volume, which is great for racking purposes. If you want to end with 1 gallon, it's always good to have at least 1.5 gallons, 1.25 gallons. For racking purposes, you're going to lose a bit of mead. So if you want to make 1 gallon at the end, it's always good to start with 1.5 gallons or at least more than 1 gallon because you're going to lose some in that clearing process. All right, now that we've mixed up our must, after adding that just about half gallon, we'll take another hydrometer reading here. All right, if you can see that, we're gonna be right at about 13.5% alcohol by volume, which is perfect, exactly where we wanna be. So 1.5 gallons of water and that 5 pounds of honey put us right at 13.5%. All right, so what we're gonna do now is zest the oranges, 4 oranges. Be careful not to get too deep into that pith there. That's gonna cause some bitterness in the overall flavor. What we want is the aromatics and some of that citrus taste. And we're gonna put it right into the initial fermentation. And then after fermentation, when we go into secondary and we rack it, we'll taste test it. We'll see if it needs a little bit more. And then if it does, I'll zest a few more oranges and I'll put that right into the secondary. All right, you see all that orange? That's all that oil from the zest. Good stuff there. That's gonna be some good aromatics. I'm gonna tie this up just like we did the big must bag for the cranberry. Ensure that we try to keep all that zest inside and not floating around in our must because it can be hard to clear out of there. So the last time around, I'm gonna grab the string and tie it off right there. Little knot. with my experience, these will stay closed the whole time. They're great. You can leave them in there for actually weeks at a time without any kind of detriment to your must or your wine or your mead. And these are, if you like these are linked down in the description below. But what we're gonna do now is put this right into our must. All right, we'll go ahead and drop that in. Just like that. Now we'll cut up our 4 oranges, and what we'll do is juice these right into the must. What can be bitter is this pith that's around here. So we're gonna juice them, zest them, get the aromatics, get the flavor, but we're gonna avoid putting that into our actual must. All you need to do is cube them up however you'd like. I'm just gonna use this little juicer. And the actual impact, some of you might be thinking, is that gonna change the alcohol by volume by adding the orange juice in from the oranges? It's gonna be so minuscule that it's not worth measuring again. So yes, technically, by adding in a little bit more juice, it could affect the ABV a little bit. Especially if there's good sugars in here, could increase that sugar content or fermentable sugars, but so small that it's not even worth measuring. All right, so now we're just gonna use our little juicer here and juice these right into the must. Put your hand over it, get sprayed in the eyeball. It's happened to me. All right, now that all the oranges are juiced in there, we'll give it one last stir before we put the lid back on and let it sit for 24 hours while the candom tablets or the candom tablet sanitize the must, and then we will add our yeast. All right, so the airlock is on. The must is in the fermentation bucket, and it will sit here for the next 24 hours while that candom tablet sanitizes the must, and then we will add our yeast. All right, so you can see the temperature is cold on our water here, about 91 degrees, which is fine. 90 to 95 is kind of what we're looking for. Take the thermometer out. What we're gonna do is add in, this is about a half a I don't have much water in here, probably a little over half a cup. I'm gonna add in about a half a tablespoon, and this is just cane sugar. I'm gonna stir that up. And this is just gonna give our yeast something to start consuming. Okay, we'll go ahead and sprinkle our 1116 yeast in there. We're just gonna let it sit there for about 15 minutes. All right, so it's been 15 minutes. Now we're gonna add 2 tablespoons of our must. I have a half tablespoon here, so it's gonna be 4 of these. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that gives us 2 full tablespoons of our must. This is gonna slowly acclimate the yeast and let it get into the best environment possible. Now we're gonna put a lid on it, swirl it up. We're not shaking it just yet. I'm just kind of swirling it and mixing it in there. I'll take the lid off, let it breathe, and we'll let it go another 15 minutes. And then I'll add 4 tablespoons. All right, so it's been 15 minutes, and we're gonna add the rest of our must here. It's gonna be, let's see, 1, 2, so that's 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons, 3, and probably about 4. But that's all I had pulled out by the wine thief. So about 4 tablespoons. You can see that it's foaming up. That yeast is getting activated in there. Nice environment. You can hear it kind of sounds sizzly and poppy. It's getting acclimated to that wine must, or I'm sorry, that mead must. And we will wait another 15 to 30 minutes, kind of let this sit. I'm going to swirl it right now. Get everything kind of nicely incorporated. Again, I'm not really shaking it just yet. I'm just kind of swirling it up. We'll let it sit there for another 30 minutes this time, and then it'll be ready to add to the mead. So if you wanted confirmation that our yeast is working and active, there you go. You can see that big foam on top. That means our yeast is ready to go. What we're gonna do now is just put this lid on, which is sanitized. Tighten it up just a little bit, and we're gonna give it just a little shake. I'm not looking to really, I'm just trying to incorporate a little bit of oxygen in there, although it's been sitting open. Get it a little bit all mixed up and incorporated. And take the lid off. And then set that down for a second. We're gonna take the lid of our fermentation bucket off. All we're gonna do now is just slowly add this into our mead. It doesn't matter if it hits all the liquid right now because we're going to stir this in. Get all that good yeast starter out. All right, there we go. Now what we'll do is just make sure everything is nice and incorporated with our sanitized stirring wand here. It smells great. If you could smell this, it smells like a tartness, I guess, that's coming from the cranberries, and as well as that little bag there you see with the orange zest in it. It smells nice and citrusy. And we'll see how that goes. If we don't get enough of the orange zest flavor that we like in primary here, I'll add a little bit more zest on the back end in secondary. So, and you can see that zip tie right there. Again, that's why we put that on there, to make sure that this bag doesn't open and just make it a lot harder to clear this mead. But it looks great right now. In about 12 to 24 hours, since we started that yeast nice and active, we should start to see that bubbler going off. So for the next 5 days, this usually takes about 7 to 10 days to ferment completely dry. But for the next 5 days, the first 5 days, this needs oxygen. You can see how much head space is in between here and the top of the fermentation bucket, which is absolutely fine. But we're still going to open this up 1 to 2 times a day. And we're going to stir it for the next 5 days to make sure that it gets the oxygen it needs. And then any of the dry, you'll see the cranberries will float, to the must bag will float. Sometimes it'll look like it's dry foam up here on top of the must bag, which is perfectly fine. You just want to reincorporate that and make sure that that bag stays nice and wet with the must. All right, we'll put the lid back on and let it do its thing. All right, guys, thanks for watching part 1 of our Christmas-inspired cranberry orange mead. I think it's going to turn out just great. Now that we have it in fermentation, just make sure that we're stirring it at least for those first 5 days. Really add in that oxygen twice a day. The yeast really needs that oxygen to multiply and to be healthy, and to convert those sugars into alcohol, so just keep that in mind. Usually in most musts, it's the first 5 days that you really need to add that oxygen, and after that, it's just fine. Watch out for part 2, and we'll take you through the next part of this process. This mead is going to turn out great, and I am super excited. If you like this kind of content and you found any value in this, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. It truly does help me out. And until then, I will see you in the next one. Cheers.